The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
And welcome to another edition of SHR Media Live, Sackheads Radio Show. I am Sackhead Clint. Here sitting to my right, which you can't see, is my good friend and co-host, Sackhead Sean. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good afternoon.
And we're here live from Freedom Fest, Las Vegas, Nevada 2015. We are here with Mr. Nick Dronius from Compact for America.
Nailed it.
Great organization. I practiced for like 3 hours before I said that last name just because I don't want to show that disrespect. Look, this is a great organization, Compact for America, and very excited about what you guys are doing, proposing. Had a chance to read up on it a little bit, and I'd like you to tell our listeners a little bit about what you do, what you're about, and please.
Well, we're about organizing the states into a formal agreement to advance a federal balanced budget amendment to start. And the basic idea is that unlimited borrowing capacity is the root cause of unlimited government, because if you have the illusion of unlimited resources, you're going to get your fingers in everything. So before we can win the overall battle for limited government, we have to cut the spigot of limitless borrowing capacity. That takes a balanced budget amendment.
And so how do you go about doing the ballot? Look, you know, there are other constitutional amendments that people have been proposing, and you've heard Convention of the States thrown around a lot. There's a big movement out there, and there's even, I heard some say, well, you know, this state called for a convention like in 1913, and now this state called for it. So we almost have enough, but not for a specific issue. So are you talking about a true convention of the states? Or are you talking about an amendment originating in Congress? What exactly is the process you envision?
What we're talking about is Article 5 2.0, in a new and improved version of the Convention of States model. Basically take the convention and wrap around it an agreement among the states that agrees to everything involved in the process in advance with supermajority support before anything happens, so they have complete safety, certainty, and speed.
So that way they don't get to a convention, everybody has to talk for an hour and debate and everything else, and then there's gridlock and no votes, or they lose votes and all that other stuff. We're talking about just having everything wrapped up ahead of time.
Exactly. Our approach has a 24-hour up or down vote. You either get it done or you don't, or go home. We also have a sunset built in. The whole thing self-repeals April 12th, 2021, so we got to get this done over the next 5 years. The reason for that is you want to have live political reputations at stake to make sure the process goes as planned.
And that way they can't kick the can down the road and say, oh, it wasn't our fault.
Exactly.
It failed here. And what specifically would your balanced budget amendment say that as you're proposing it? Because, look, we agree with you. Our spending is out of control, and we're an opinion show. We make no bones about it. And yeah, we are in support of this, and that's why we're very excited to have you here today. But,
fantastic.
But I'm curious very specifically about the wording. What exactly does it say? What powers would it give to the president? What powers would it give to Congress? What powers would it give for the states or allow the states to retain?
Real simple. It has three major components. One, limit the amount of borrowing capacity of the federal government. Put a limit on its credit card, just a specific dollar amount. Make that initial limit large enough so that we can transition away from limitless borrowing, so we can take the heroin addict off the heroin without killing the patient. Then you want to have some flexibility in that limit, but you don't want to leave it in the hands of the debt addict to decide when to get his supply. So we reintroduce the states into the process. In order to get any more borrowing capacity, you've got to convince 26 state legislatures in 60 days to approve it in a single subject measure, sort of like a referendum like we do for school bonds. Now, that will ensure the only time you get more borrowing capacity is for something that really commands immediate consensus across the nation and deserves it. That's much better than a war exception, because if you had a war exception, then everything would be a war and you'd never stop borrowing.
Right.
And the last thing is you want to make sure that deficits are closed first with spending reductions, second with taxes. The way we do that is we say you have to get 2/3 of each House of Congress to get any new income or sales tax, but we create three exceptions. We say you can raise revenues through closing loopholes with simple majorities. You can raise revenues through switching from an income tax to a sales tax, and you can raise revenues through tariffs or fees. Now, there's no doubt you can raise a lot of revenues that way, but if you think about who's going to fight back, they're the strongest special interests. If you ask somebody what would be easier, getting rid of the homeowner's deduction or jumping 2/3 of each House of Congress, I think it'd be a wash. And so the basic thing is that spending reductions look relatively more attractive, and you'll only get the tax revenue when you truly have true supermajority consensus.
And is there some verbiage or something in place, or the idea, or perhaps a discussion point that's out there in terms of how much you have to reduce the deficit with spending cuts versus revenues? Because I'll tell you, fees scare me. Anything can be a fee, very administrative term, and nobody really checks it. That term really scares me. So how do you ensure that, well, hey, we cut $100,000 in spending, and so now we can go ahead and increase some of these fees or raise revenues in these other ways, including taxes or whatnot?
We're not prescriptive. What we do is we say, look, the bad guys can win sometimes. We're in a casino. You're not going to get anyone in a casino if the house wins 99.9% of the time.
Well, otherwise, we wouldn't have these huge palaces
and,
that we're in right
and
now.
The bad guys probably can conceive of ways to beat our amendment if we gave them enough of incentive to violate it. So there is a possibility of some bad tax policy. But over the long run, or spending reductions are going to look a lot more attractive, because even when you raise fees, there's specific people who get hit with those fees who are going to fight you tooth and nail. And that's never pleasant for politicians. If they look at either fighting a powerful special interest for a new fee or just cutting some frog farm subsidy somewhere that doesn't have any real constituency behind it, then it's more likely they're going to do that. So our goal is not to make it impossible for us to get to the end result of 38 states in the agreement, which requires some purple states. It's not to guarantee that we always win. It's to turn the direction of the ship away from the iceberg and recognize that sometimes we're going to tack back and forth, but we're going to put this system on a system where 55% of the time the right ideas win. That's all we need to win this war in the long run.
And so how are you seeing this movement progress? Is it gaining traction?
Absolutely. We've got 4 states that have joined in the past 12 months. We have Georgia, Alaska, North Dakota, Mississippi. We have it pending in Ohio, in Michigan, and in North Carolina. In Congress, there's a resolution that has to be passed to activate it, but then you're done. That resolution has 20 co-sponsors on the House side. Senator Perdue from Georgia just said he's going to introduce it on the Senate side. We're hopeful that we're going to double those numbers or triple those numbers in the House, and maybe double or triple those numbers, hopefully even better than that in the Senate.
Outstanding. So what is it our listeners can do to help with this?
Go to compactforamerica.org, compactforamerica.org. It's completely spelled out. Get educated. Start with the education. Understand what this is. You get 38 states into an agreement to advance a federal balanced budget amendment to limit the borrowing capacity of the federal government so that the federal government doesn't behave like it has limitless resources and can stick its fingers in everything. That's what you need to do. Get educated about that process. Then recognize that in the long run, you've got to convince a lot of politicians that it's in their own interest in a narrow way to support this issue. So let them know that you support this idea. And also, as we see the disaster in Greece unfold and Puerto Rico and maybe even China, all these things have the root cause in excessive borrowing. Send links of that to their friends, their neighbors, their family, because there isn't a whole lot of awareness of how dangerous unlimited borrowing capacity is until usually the system crashes, and we don't want to wait for that.
Right, look, in everybody's personal life, if you have a credit card, there is a limit to how much you could have. So why is the federal government exempted from that?
44 states have limits on their credit cards and their constitutions, either balanced budget requirements or debt limits. 49 states either do it by statute, case law, or constitutional. Only Vermont is as radical as the federal government and just trusting government with a limitless credit card and hoping for the best. So the bottom line is this: the federal government is way behind the state of the art in public policy. We have learned in the states over the past 150 years, you give unlimited credit cards to politicians, they will buy votes with it, and they will be safely out of office when the chickens come home to roost. So there's no natural limit in the political process. Our kids getting socked with the bills aren't voting. They're not a political threat. And that's why they the politicians abuse this unlimited credit card. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain when they have an unlimited credit card.
Well, and one of the things we've seen here, and you say, our kids, the millennials that are coming up now that are stuck with the last couple of decades are starting to get angry about it. And so when we start looking at the debt and looking at the deficit that we have in this unlimited spending, we're seeing the effects on it getting kicked down the road repeatedly. And it's going to get worse if something's not done soon. And that I really think that people don't understand that. I think they think, $17 trillion, we'll just hold it that. No, it's going to be $20 trillion in a couple of years. It'll keep going because we're not doing anything to offset right now. And they're doing everything they can to find something else to spend money on.
Absolutely. And what's worse is not just the nearly $20 trillion debt, but it's the fact the unlimited credit card enables politicians to promise things that they can never deliver, like $210 trillion in unfunded entitlement programs, which is the present value according to Lawrence Kotlikoff. So the way to think about this is how differently would you behave in your own life if you had a limitless credit card that you thought would never get called on? Wouldn't you promise everything your kids want for Christmas and then some? Wouldn't you go on every vacation under the sun? Wouldn't money be no object for anything? See, this is the problem.
I'd be famous in the city we're in right now.
Right, so we're expecting government to behave. Yeah, well, we're expecting government to behave like an angel by giving them an unlimited credit card. It is completely ridiculous to think that they are not going to crack up using this, and we are at Greece levels of borrowing capacity, borrowed debt right now. In 2007, when everyone started panicking about Greece, we were over 100% of our GDP, our gross domestic product, everything we produce in a year, in national debt. That's where Greece was in 2007. That's where we are now. We've been there for 5 years. The rest of the world at some point is going to say, guys, we don't think this is going to last. And when that happens, we're going to be in the same situation as Greece, where the creditors of the world are going to dictate to us, despite our sovereignty, what our policy should be.
So my last question is this whole idea for Compact America seems to be steeped in common sense and something that people can understand. You do get the fact that has no place in our federal government, right? Common sense, understanding, transparency. How are you going to sell that to people when they've been so jaded to believe what goes on in Washington every single day is acceptable?
States lead. States lead, and Washington will follow because of their own crass political interests. They'll see a parade they want to jump in front of. So that's the key thing. You don't rely on the virtue of the bad guys. You design a political approach that incentivizes them to do the right thing for the wrong reasons.
Well, and it's absolutely amazing that it's so bizarre when you tell people, oh, well, the states are going to be involved, and the states are going to take the lead. And they're saying, well, what do the states have anything to do with the federal government? Because we've gone so far away from states' rights and states being involved. I mean, look, after the 17th Amendment was repealed, you've really lost the representation of state on a federal level, and it offsets the balance, right?
Well, let me just emphasize something. The most powerful thing the states have is the power to amend the Constitution, to define federal power. It's the only power the states have that hasn't been destroyed by bad case law. So if there's any place you're going to go... Yeah. Okay.
Don't challenge them.
All right.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Thanks for that, to bring to some attorney's attention. That was really good of you. You really nailed that one, though.
There's somebody in Washington right now is like, oh, I didn't even think about that. This is going.
I want to tell our listeners, if you go to the website and you click on the media kit, it's all laid out right there. I'm staring at it right now. You have the entire text of the balanced budget. And I think you did in like 24 pages what the federal government would probably take like 30,000 pages to do. Yep. It's really concise. It's very clear. It's very well laid out. And you mind giving our listeners one more time where they can find that?
Absolutely. It's compactforamerica.org, compactforamerica.org. Go to the press kit page. You're going to have everything you need to tell your parents, tell your friends, tell your neighbors what they need to know to support this effort.
And more importantly, your senators, your state senators, your representatives.
Yeah, keep the senators people out of it. We want the state senators and the people.
Just people to know it's coming. I think that needs to be done. Nick, sir, thank you so very, very much
today.
It's
been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
That's going to be a live from Freedom Fest here on the floor. That's Compact for America Part 1. We're actually going to have Part 2 coming up here real shortly, tell you a little bit more about it. Nick Drenius joined us, and we're absolutely excited. Thank you very much. We'll be back shortly here on the SHR Media Network.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
Sack News. Sack News.
Radio.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America.
In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.